trying to post the values to the server. That is, we are trying to create some data inside the server with the help of this particular network call. So in a get method we are trying to fetch the values, and in the post method we are trying to post the values onto the server. In this vlog, we will see the implementation of post network call using provider in your Flutter applications. So in our previous tutorial, we have seen the network call implementation using get method with provider. So I suggest you to go through our previous tutorial for more detailed information on how we implement a network call. And also I'm providing the entire provider playlist in the description section below, and I suggest you to go through it if you are a beginner. So now let us get started with this tutorial. So the first thing is we need to add the dependencies here. I have added provider and HTTP for network call, and you can specify the version which is available latest. And now let's try to import material.dart. So this is the very first step, and specify void main, and within this we will try to specify our class and also the provider. So specify run app, and within this let's specify multi provider. And I have discussed what's a provider, and in our previous tutorial we have discussed what is a multi provider and why we are making use of it. So just go through that particular tutorial, so inside which we can just specify providers. So these are the list of providers we will specify in our multi provider, and try to import the provider package as we have added in our dependencies. So now let's try to provide our providers within this particular list of providers. So now let us try to provide a change notifier provider of type data here. So let's create a class data. So let's create a dart file data, and within which let's create a data class and try to import it here and specify data over here. So there goes our provider. We have only one provider for now, and you can add few more providers if required. And now let's specify the child here. I'm just specifying my app, so this will be our stateless widget class here, my app, and there goes our coding inside it. So here I think it's very clear for you. We have considered multi-provider and just specified only single provider for now. You can also specify multiple providers, and we have a tutorial on multi-providers specifically. So here it is. You may have a look at it. So within the data class, we need to make some configurations here. So this is a class which extends change notifier and import material.dart for it. And also let's try to create a class data model, and this class data model has the required attributes like int id. So let's make them final here, and final string user id, and also string title. So for which let's try to create or generate a constructor. Select all here and tap on OK. And now I just want to make them required. So I require all these things. Specify factory data model dot from JSON, and here let's specify a map of string comma dynamic, as we are having int and string. So I'm just specifying dynamic here. So now we'll try to pass the JSON here by using their key values. And now let's try to return data model, and here you can see these are the things which are generated for us. So id, user id and title. And now with the help of this JSON, let's try to parse the value. So now let's try to see what is the API structure we are getting. So here you can see this is what the API structure, like user ID, title and body. But I'm considering these three fields here, user ID and title. So now the thing is that we are making use of the post method. So we are trying to post the values to the server. That is, we are trying to create some data inside the server with the help of this particular network call. So in a get method we are trying to fetch the values, and in the post method we are trying to post the values onto the server. So we'll be receiving a status code 201, that is a created data is created onto your server. So now let's try to see the example in Postman now. So here you can see this is our API here, and for which we are providing some title here. So let's specify abhi and id to be 101 here. So here you can see we have created some content. So the request has been fulfilled and result in a new resource being created. So we have got status 201 here, that is our content is being created. So we are making use of a post call. So now let us try to see the same with our Flutter application as well. So as you have seen the key value pairs already, so let's try to parse them like JSON of id here, and for this JSON of user id. So here we have capital I. So I suggest you to be very careful here while providing these key value pairs. Why? Because if you have specified a small letter instead of the capital, you might not be able to parse the data exactly, so it will be resulting in an error here. So if you observe carefully here, I have specified a spelling mistake, like here instead of L I have specified K here. So make sure once you provide these values, re-verify whether they are according to the API or not. So now we have got a data class here and a data model here. So now let's try to specify the data model. So let's make a late initialization of data model here, and now try to fetch data. And what are the things we require for fetching the data here needs to be considered. So I require context and index value for now, and if we require anything more we can just come back and add it over here, or if we don't want also we can come back and just remove it. And also this is of a type asynchronous, so we need to wait for the end result. So now let's get data model equal to await. So as we have specifying asynchronous method, we need to wait post data context comma index. So we are passing these two parameters which we receive. So let's import this data model here. So this particular post data method we will be making use in our main dot file here. And now the final step is to notify listeners so that you are able to listen to the data with the help of this provider. So you are trying to provide the data, right? So you need to hear in this particular main.dart file. So we are making use of this notify listeners here so that you will be able to notify it with the changes coming up. So now let's try to return material app here instead of a container, inside which let's try to specify a home class. And now this home class is of a type stateful widget. So let's specify it. And now let's try to return a scaffold here instead of a container. So I'm just considering scaffold. So scaffold provides the basic structure for your application, so within which let's specify body. And so here we require a multi-child widget, so I'm considering column here. And if there is only single widget, you can just go for container as well. So now let's try to specify our UI components here. So the very first thing I require is text input field. So let's specify a text field over here, and let's try to add a decoration tag here. So input decoration, so using which you can just specify a hint text here like enter title. So now we are trying to input a title and post it to our API here. So here you may have number of text fields depending upon your requirement. You can have multiple text fields or buttons or anything. So you can just fetch the data from that particular UI components and post it to your API. So as it is an example, so I'm just specifying only one text field here, and let's consider a text button, so which will have an on press anonymous method here and a child. So within the child I am going to specify a text widget, and let's provide it to be submit. So yes, these are the two UI components for now. So now once you tap on this particular button, we try to post the data to our API. So now here in the data class we have specified fetch data, right? So just for the name I have specified like fetch data here. You can specify your own name here. So now let's make use of this here, fetch data, and you need to pass the context and what are the things like index here. So I'm going to pass the context, and for now let's try to specify index to be a constant value like 1. I'm specifying here. You can just replace this value 1. So now let's try to create an object data here with the help of provider dot of. So specify the type to be data here and add context. So now we have got the data object here. So making use of the data object, we can use the fetch data method here. Fetch the value from the text field, that is the user input text. We need to make use of a text editing controller. So now let's make use of a text editing controller for title. So title controller equal to text editing controller, and if you have multiple text fields then you need to add multiple controllers for them. So now let's try to add this particular controller here. So title controller. So whenever you want to get the data from this particular text field, you can just make use of this controller here. So now let's try to create the post data method here. So we have specified right the post data method. So now let's try to specify this. So this is of a type future here of data model, and post data here we require two parameters like build context, and one more thing is integer. So now let's try to import data model as well, and for now we have considered one here, right? So this is a default value constant I have said. So now we will try to replace them and try to provide title controller, and here also instead of index, so we will try to make it a string value. So just to make it easier for you to understand, I have provided the basic values while writing the code, but we will change it according to our requirement now. So now we need to pass the title to the API. So let's specify a data input. So here we'll specify the values in terms of key value pairs here. So what we want to provide is like title, and for now let's specify the constant. So like default I'm adding here, and instead of integer here let's try to make it as a string and title. So now let's directly replace it over here. So whatever the title we are passing to this particular method will be added to our data input, and this will be passed as a post parameter to our API. So now let's try to handle the API call. So final response equal to, and also we need to make this method to be asynchronous and add await here, http dot, sure you have imported the http here. Let's try to import our package http. So we have added it as a dependency in pubspec file. So let's make it like as http so that you can just make use of http here and add a post method here, uri dot parse. So here within this, let's try to provide our url. So let's copy our url. Here we have within the postman here, so copy this particular url and add it over here. So instead of album, let's specify post here. So this is our API which we are using for this tutorial. And now it's time to add headers here. So you might be aware what are the headers and why do we add at the time of network call. If not, please let me know in the comment section below. I will surely try to provide the required information regarding this. So let's try to provide this in terms of key value pair as well. Content type, so we are specifying the content type here. So application form URL encoded, form URL encoded. And again there are different content types, you can just make them according to your requirement. For example, when you are trying to post an image or an audio file or a video file, specify the content type accordingly. And let's add encoding also. So convert dot encoding, so import convert here, dot convert here you can see. And as we did for http, let's make it like as convert. And here you can now get by name, and let's specify utf-8. So this is a general encoding format we use. And now finally specify the body here. So let's specify data input. So what is the data input here? What is to say you clearly? Here we are passing ID and title, right? So this is what the body we are trying to pass with the code as well. So this is the structure of providing the title here. So this thing again will be changed based on your API keys. So if you are trying to post a name or an age, what are the things, what are the key value it might be, you can just replace it over here now. So here you can see we are still able to see an error because we have not returned a data model. So let's try to complete the code and return a data model. So now let's make use of this response here. So if response double equal to 201, so again what is 201 here? So here if you observe status 201, so this is a status code and we are trying to verify against it. So if the status is 201, so that is our content is created. So let's compare it with response dot status code here, double equal to 201. Let's try to return data model dot from JSON and convert, so making use of convert dot JSON and decode the string resource, that is response dot body here. If we have received any error, so let's make an else code block to handle this, like throw an exception. So specify something went wrong or whatever the text you think which suits better, so you can just add it over here. So here you can see our error is no more now because we have returned the data model. So this is it for the post method. And make sure everything is according to this particular tutorial when you are trying this. So don't skip any line of code because everything is the most important here. So I have not added any additional things, so these are all the general things which you need to specify, and you can also customize them like encoding and here body and headers and also your URL. Just customize the things and also the status code, and you can just make use of this with your application. So now let's try to see the overview once. So here we have specified a void main, and inside which we have specified a multi provider, and we have added the providers and added a child, that is my app, which is a stateless widget here, and inside which we have specified a material app, and in the home class we have considered a stateful widget, and inside which we have returned a scaffold which forms the basic structure of our application, like it provides the basic skeleton of our application. And here we have considered a multi-child widget, that is column, and added two widgets here like text field and text button here. So using text field we are trying to accept the title provided by the user, and using the text button we are trying to submit that particular title to our API here. So this is our data class, and here we are extending it with the change notifier here, and here we have considered data model. So the data model is having all the keys here, like ID, user ID and title here. So we are trying to parse the values from the API, and now we are trying to make use them. So now let's try to import main.dart here so that this error is fixed. And here, so with the help of the fetch data here, so from the text button here you can see on press we are making use of the fetch data, right? So here we are trying to pass the context and index value here. So whenever you're trying to fetch the data, you will fetch with help of the index position. So as a just constant value I have provided one here. So now we are trying to post this time, so the name doesn't suit, it's not fetch data, it's like sending data. You can just make it like send data as well. So send data, and you can just replace it over here. And here let's make use of the title controller and dot text to string here. So we are fetching the user input from the text field, and we are trying to provide it to this particular send data here. And now let's try to make it like send info. So let's add the same over here. So nothing changed, just the name change here, and that doesn't affect the data model anyway. So now here we are trying to pass a title here, so that particular title we have provided it into data input, and all these things we have just discussed now. So now let's try to run this particular code and see the output once, and make any new configurations if required. So here you can see we have got the output, but this is not properly aligned. And also make the main axis alignment to the center of the screen here, and try to restart it. And so yeah, it's a bit better, but as this is an example, you can just add a padding everything over here. So let's quickly add some padding here. Let's make it 20 and make a restart. And yes, we only have title here. So now let's try to add one more field here, and consider that field to be asking for a user ID. So enter user ID. So why we are specifying user ID is like sometimes we need to add a user ID manually. So for this particular API we also require a user ID. So now let's add a user ID. So this will be a backend generated, but now let's try to specify it manually. So text editing controller, and just add this user ID controller here. So now let's try to add this particular value as well to our send data method. So user ID controller dot text dot to string. So now I think you are very much aware like how to configure the code according to your requirements. So previously we were having only one text field, so I have added one more text field to make it easier for the beginners to configure this particular tutorial and make it according to their requirement. So now it's showing an error. Yes, it will be showing because we are accepting only two parameters here. So send, so let's make it like user id and this one to be title. So specify the same here, title, user id, and follow this camel case notation. And again in the post data also we need to configure it accordingly. So string title comma string user id, and it will be like integer sometimes and string sometimes. So let's specify the same here, user id, and add the string here. So okay, we have specified capital D here, so let's make it a small d, and yes, it will go into this particular body here. And now let's try to rerun the code. And also yes, we need to add few more lines here. So yes, we have successfully completed everything, but we need to see the response, right? So for that, let's try to print the response status code here so that you can know what is the response code we are having. And one more print statement, like what is the response we have got. So yes, we have pushed some information onto the API, and what is the result. So response dot body, here we are passing it, right? So let's try to provide the same onto the screen here. Though we are parsing the response, we are not displaying it anywhere onto the screen. And you can just make use of the text fields and you can display the data onto the screen, but it will be a more lengthier tutorial, so I'm just trying to print it onto the screen. And if you are having any queries, if you are a beginner how to make use of this particular response, do let me know in the comment section below. I will try to help you. So here we have refreshed our code here. And one more thing you can notice here is like we have not added an app bar here, so I don't think we require here. So just to understand the concept, so I have skipped the app bar. And now let's try to add a title like abhi and user id to be 101 or 102, something you can just specify, and click on the submit button here. And here you can observe we have got the first thing is like status code 201 we have received. So if you have seen our postman also, we have got 201 here. So here the same title abhi and id 101. So when you try to send a request, we have got id to be 101 and title to be abhi here. So the same thing we have got here, title, user id and id. So you can see we have not specified any id here, but it's based on the API, it's auto generated for us and provided back. So we have used this JSON placeholder website so as a backend API. And yes, this is it for the tutorial on post method usage using provider in our Flutter application. So if you have gone through our previous tutorials, it would be much better for you to understand. And yes, of course we have gone through a very easy example, and even if you are a beginner you can easily understand this. But yeah, you can just refer to our previous tutorials if required. I'm providing the link in the description section below, and the code for this tutorial is also provided in our website. So do visit our website for this code and for more tutorials on Flutter also. And feel free to ask me your queries in the comment section below. And yes, if you like this tutorial, do like, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting content on Flutter.